So you're thinking about doing Imogen's monologue, Why I Must Die, from Cymbeline. That is great because it is a challenging but really powerful monologue, but I can imagine that you might need a little bit of help with it, and that is why I am here. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about the context for that monologue, so the kind of things in the plot that have led up to it, so you've got all the information you need. I'm going to talk about your acting choices and some of the prep you might like to do, and I'm going to do a line-by-line breakdown so you understand what it's all about. And at the end, I will do a little reading so you can hear how I would kind of put it together. Let's start with the context. Cymbeline is a bonkers play and it's barely ever performed, so you might be struggling to kind of find the information you need, or you might be struggling to understand it, or you might be struggling to find a production that you can watch. So I'm going to recommend a couple of places that you can find more information that might help you, and I'm also going to just do like a really basic rundown of what happens in the play up to this point. What I really recommend for this play is actually to read a synopsis slowly, because actually just to dot point all the important things that happen in the play so you understand the plot, it's like 3 paragraphs long and you couldn't miss any of those dot points. So even just jump on Wikipedia and see what it has there. It's pretty detailed, so take it slowly and see kind of what you can get out of it. If you're still quite new to the play and you're finding it hard to read the play without kind of any experience, or having seen a production. Firstly, what I would recommend is that the Royal Shakespeare Company has a production of Cymbeline that's fairly recent that you can see on marquee TV or digital theatre. So that might be something that might help you. But also my friend Tim Nance, who does a lot of videos on Shakespeare, he has an explanation video, a couple of videos actually, that walk through the plot. So I'll link that for you here and below. So that's a good place to start. I also love a podcast called The Hurly Burly Shakespeare Show. They have a good episode on Cymbeline that kind of walks through the plot, and they're really fun to listen to. So if you're a podcast person, I definitely recommend that. And they have a more detailed episode that is about like the history of Cymbeline. So that's great if you're a more experienced actor. So the main thing you need to know is that Imogen is a princess and she secretly married Posthumus. Her father, the king, was not happy about this and he exiled Posthumus off to Italy. And she's just been kind of like mourning this whole time and like, oh, I'm just going to stay faithful. And she's a very, very faithful person. And in fact, sometimes her name is actually Imogen. Sometimes you see it with an N in some editions and in some productions. And that's kind of referring to her innocence. So you can actually call her Imogen if you prefer, rather than Imogen. Now, there's a dude called Giacomo who meets Posthumus in Italy. Now notice his name is a little bit similar to Iago. That's kind of the vibe there, is this guy that's kind of come to stuff with everyone for no real good reason. He says to Posthumus, I bet I can get Imogen to sleep with me. And Posthumus is like, no way, you're gonna need some proof. And, long story short, Giacomo fakes all this and goes back to Posthumus and is like, yeah, I totally slept with her because he actually just snuck into her room and looked at her boobs. Yeah. So, dodgy bloke. Now, because he's able to say like, oh, she had a mole on her boob, Posthumus is like, oh, he must have slept with her, and immediately is like, oh my God, she's cheated on me. All women suck. He has an enormous monologue about how much women suck. And guess what, Posthumus? You kind of suck. Even his kind of manservant, Philario, was like, hang on a sec, what? This could just be like, he could have heard this from someone, or he could have tricked, it's like, calm down. And Posthumus is like, no, she's definitely cheated on me. And so he writes a letter to Imogen's kind of manservant butler person and is like, I want you to kill her. And of course, Pisanio, the manservant receiving this letter, is like, what? And he has this amazing line. How? Of adultery? Wherefore write you not what monsters her accuser? Now, this feels very real to me because it's like, yeah, hang on a second. Why are you immediately assuming that it's adultery? Why aren't you writing about this horrible guy that has accused her of being unfaithful? Why are you immediately jumping to believe this dude that you don't even know over the person that you supposedly love and are committed to? So, I mean, that's some of the themes of the play, really. It's like, it really didn't take much for Posthumus to give her up. And not only like give up on her, but actually want her murdered. Really, to me, speaks to his character being pretty weak and insecure. So in this scene where we see Imogen kind of freak out, Bassanio has taken her to Milford Haven, and they've been, you know, riding with the horse and carriage or whatever for quite a while, and she's like, oh, are we nearby? Like little princess coming out of, is he here, my true love? That's what I imagine is actually just like in Enchanted. And Bassanio is like, actually read this letter, and gives her the letter from Posthumus, and she freaks out. This whole scene is her freaking out, and this monologue is kind of in the middle of the freak out, and that leads us to your acting choices. What I want you to think about in your prep is that actually, where most monologues have a dramatic arc, this scene has the dramatic arc. It's tricky to look at the sense of arc in this monologue singularly, because actually what's happening is happening over the whole scene. It's actually massive. So you must look at the whole scene in a fair amount of detail when you prep. If you can, grab an acting buddy and have them play Bassanio so you can kind of play off him. It's very, very important. There's a lot of back and forth and there's a lot of reaction. You might want to think about in the monologue things that he might be doing that she's reacting to, because some of what she's saying is to him and some of it's kind of like to her imagined Posthumus, that she's like kind of yelling at the clouds. Posthumus! And at the very least, you need to understand that this monologue really starts actually before Why I Must Die. It starts, come fellow, be thou honest, do thou thy master's bidding. So that's in kind of like this section before. So have a look at that. That's where she begins the idea of like, all right then, come at me. Come on, do what he said. Come and kill me. In this monologue, there are specific actions that are in the text. And so you're going to need to do those, or you're going to look a bit stupid. So you really, really need to understand what is happening in this scene. And particularly in this bit, just before she begins the monologue, she's like, okay, come and kill me. And she says, I draw the sword myself. So she actually takes, I would say probably Bassanio's sword, and tries to give it to him. And he then says, hence, vile instrument, thou shalt not damn my hand, and throws it away. So that is useful for you to know in the lead up to this. Oh, light. Where doth thou go? Excuse my terrible Shakespearean. So in your prep, you are looking at what action is happening. You're also looking at when is she talking to Bassanio and when is she sort of talking to Posthumus in the clouds, and when is she kind of reflecting to herself, or also when might she even be talking to the audience. That is a possibility, but don't make it too labored. If you don't want to have 1,000 eyeline points, okay? So keep things simple for yourself. Make sure you're feeling clear about those changes. The other thing I want you to think about in prepping is getting grounded, and I will do some little things about this on Instagram, so come and have a look on Instagram. I'm going to do some exercises and give you some pointers on that, because this is a high stakes emotional monologue where you're jumping into a person that's very, very upset. You are going to need to instantly access very high emotion. Now, often what happens when we do that is that we actually get kind of stuck in our heads and we end up being a bit hysterical and going like, oh, la, 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 and it gets all kind of up here. That's why grounding yourself is really important. You need to connect to the gut of this monologue. This is a gut monologue where everything is coming from a really deep place of hurt and betrayal. This is a double betrayal. She has been betrayed by Posthumus and also by someone who she thought was her friend, Bassanio. And she has now been left with nothing, basically, because she left the court. She has nothing to go back to. So you need to be able to drop into that instantly. And it's very, very important to be in touch with your body in order to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be that la 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 la, that hysterical thing all up here, and it will not read as truthful. Let's look at the line meanings now, so we understand what's happening. Now, this is important because it is hard to find explanations, I find, online. So, she starts with why I must die. So that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. And if I do not by thy hand, thou art no servant of thy masters. So if you're not going to kill me, then you're not really a proper servant, are you? And again, I think referring to Posthumus as the master, really hammering home, well, you're not really loyal to me, are you? You're just loyal to Posthumus. So master here is really like, I think that's a bit of a dig. Now, she switches thoughts so quickly. She says, against self-slaughter there is a prohibition so divine that cravens my weak hand. She's saying here that I would do it myself, except for that would be damning me. So she's quite religious in her, and she's quite pious, really. Craven's my weak hand. Craven means like to kind of like make it cowardly. So she's like, it's almost like God is stopping me from doing this otherwise, because I physically can't even do it because my soul won't let me. She's very dramatic. Right. Then she says, come, here's my heart. So I would say, so this is when we start to think about action. Something here, she is trying to reveal, her heart. So whether she's sort of pulling her coat aside or whatever, it doesn't have to be like sexy and taking her clothes off, but it's just more like a reveal here. And then she says, these are quick changes again, something's afoot. Now this I think would be sort of reflective, because she's saying, oh, there's something here, what is that? Then she says, soft will no defense. Now what I imagine here, the reason she's saying that is because I think Pisania is actually kind of moving away from her at that point. So because soft generally means like wait or hold on, so I would think the only reason that she's really saying that is like, hang on a sec, like don't go away. If he's not moving, then she's just saying like, pause, like I'm gonna go ahead with this, just hang on. I'm not gonna defend myself. Obedient as the scabbard. So she's really painting a picture there, and I love that imagery, because it's really just like the scabbard being the holder, the sword holder. She's like, I was gonna say put it in me. That sounds terrible. Oh my God. Dirty. I'm sorry. Stab me is what she's saying. Right. What is here? And so in that whole process, it's taken her that long to find whatever was in the way of her heart. So she's just had like a full line, and she's like, oh, what is this? Don't go away. I'm gonna, be stabbable in a second. What is this? Pull something out. The scriptures of the loyal Leonatus. So this is like letters from these are letters from Leonatus, who is Posthumus, that's his first name, Leonatus Posthumus. Posthumus Leonatus. Away, corrupters of my faith. So she's throwing the letters away, right? So there's all this action happening here, and you have to do it. There's not really a lot of variation that you can do in there, but you can interpret it slightly differently in the timing of it and how you play it. But you need to understand that there's action. You shall no more be stomachers to my heart. So that's a play on words there. So stomachers generally means something that like feeds something. So she's saying that the letters were feeding her love, and she's just using the organ image there. Think about why she's using that image. I personally think it's because she feels wounded. She feels like internally like her organs are broken. Thus may poor fools believe false teachers, though those that are betrayed do feel the treason sharply, yet the traitor stands in worst case of woe. That is a really interesting section, and I have not found really good explanation for that being there. The way that I interpret it is that she's like, well, I think it's another religious reference here. So she's saying, thus may poor fools believe false teachers, because there are these scriptures, she's referred to these letters that she's been given and taught, but he's a false teacher, a false kind of idol, I guess. These are sort of, she's using that kind of religious terminology here. And that goes on to, though those that are betrayed do feel the treason sharply. She's saying like the people that have been like duped feel it when they realize it, yet the traitor stands in worst case of woe. The false idol is going to be the one that's going to be damned. So the person that has built themselves up and lied to everyone is the one that's going to suffer in the end, because they're going to go to hell. That is how I would interpret it. And it's an interesting one, because you kind of go, but why is that there? Partly I think it's because she is a really pious person, but also it could be something that's comforting her. Or it could be something that she's throwing act posthumous by being like, well, you know I'm feeling this, but you are got to be the one that suffers, really. She switches very clearly now to be talking to the shaking your fist at the clouds. And thou, posthumous, thou that did set up my obedience against the king my father, and make me put into contempt the suits of princely fellows, shalt hereafter find it is no act of common passage, but a strain of rareness. So that kind of all goes together. So you, who made me disobey my father and send away all the other people that were on my level, like my class level, whom posthumous is not on her class level, he made her do those things and she gave up everything, is what she's saying. You are going to find that this is not something that all women are going to do, especially women on my class level. It is a strain of rareness, being like, this is not something that most people do. She's recognizing her own worth here. And this next bit is interesting to interpret as well. So I do my best in my interpretation, but people may disagree with me with some of these bits. So please drop them in the comments if you have a different interpretation. It's useful for people to see. So, I grieve myself to think, when thou shalt be dissedged by her that now thou tirest on, how thy memory will then be panged by me. She's thinking about posthumous hooking up with some other chick. So she's saying, whoever you're sleeping with now, when you're kind of done with her and you've had your fill, I'm going to be sad to think about how you will think on me and you will realize what you've done. I kind of love this moment. Prithee, dispatch. Now she's then switched back to Pisanio. Come on, let's do it. Get it over with. The lamb entreats the butcher. Where's thy knife? When she's saying where's thy knife, I don't think she means literally like get your knife, because she's giving him a sword. It's to do with the image of the butcher. So she's saying get your blade out, but she's just using the butcher imagery there. Thou art too slow to do thy master's bidding when I desire it too. Now, I take that as you don't want to do it because I'm asking you to. Like, you only want to do it when posthumous asks you, but now that I want it as well, you don't want to go through with it. What? Because you hate me. So there's a lot of subtext here. It's actually a massive, massive monologue. So, congratulations if you are doing this. Good. You need to do the work, because you need to really understand how you interpret it, layer on the subtext and the movement and the changes. It is tricky. Okay, so prep time. Prep time is key. So I'm going to do a little reading, but I'm actually going to take my earrings off because I feel like I'm going to move around a lot and I can hear them clinking. So it feels like taking my rings off. Here's one I prepared earlier. Oh, I forgot to mention before, that first line, long vowels. And it will be helpful to you if you lean into those vowels. I'm going to see what I can do to demonstrate those things. Why, I must die. And if I do not by thy hand, thou art no servant of thy master's. Against self-slaughter there is a prohibition so divine that cravens my weak hand. Come, here's my heart. Swings for it. Self will no defense, obedient as the scabbard. What's here? Scriptures of the loyal Leonardist, all turned to heresy. Away, away, corrupters of my faith. You shall no more be stomachers to my heart. Thus may poor fools believe false teachers. Though those that are betrayed do feel the treason sharply, yet the traitor stands in worse case of woe. Thou, posthumous, thou that didst set up my disobedience against the king my father, and make me put into contempt the suits of princely fellows, shalt hereafter find it is no act of common passage, but a strain of rareness. And I grieve myself to think, when thou shalt be dissedged by her that now thou tirest on, how thy memory will then be panged by me. Prithee, dispatch. The lamb entreats the butcher. Where's thy knife? Thou art too slow to do thy master's bidding when I desire it too. Such a powerful monologue. It's a good one. You do need to be really connected to make it work. It's all in the guts. It's in the vowels. The vowels. You might want to check out some of my technique videos to help with these things, especially the movement one will probably help you because it will talk about how to connect your body and how to kind of plan movement when you've got a monologue like this. And if you found this useful, like, share, subscribe, all those things, and I will see you next time.